You arrive in Philadelphia after dark, when the city looks less like a place and more like a memory of one. The driver lets you out near the old prison wall, and for a second you stand with your bag over your shoulder, staring up at the stone rise in front of you. Eastern State Penitentiary does not look abandoned. It looks paused, as if something enormous has just inhaled and is waiting to exhale again. The broken towers are black against the sky. The wall is high enough to feel personal. You tell yourself you are here for work, that you came to record the sound of old architecture for a documentary, that it is only a prison museum after all, one of the most famous in America. It opened in 1829, they told you, built on an idea so severe it sounded almost holy. Isolate a man completely, give him silence, give him a skylight, and let guilt do the rest. You know that history. You know the Pennsylvania system. You know that Charles Dickens visited and called the punishment cruel and wrong. You know the prison was eventually forced to abandon the system and that it finally closed in 1971. Facts are supposed to protect you from fear. Tonight, they do not. The gate opens with a groan that sounds too much like a warning. A woman waits inside the entrance with a flashlight in one hand and a radio clipped to her coat. Her name is Mara, and she is the historian assigned to walk you through the East Block after the public tours have ended. She has the tired, careful voice of someone who has spent years explaining the same terrible building to people who want to be thrilled more than educated. She looks at your equipment, then at your face. You came alone, she asks. You nod. She studies you for a moment, as if deciding whether that was brave or stupid, and then gestures for you to follow. The moment you cross into the yard, the temperature drops. The prison air is different from city air. It is older. It tastes of wet stone, rust, and something faintly metallic that you cannot place. The cell blocks climb up around you like the ribs of a dead animal. Every sound you make returns a little too slowly, as if the walls have to think before they answer. Mara leads you beneath an arch and begins the history in the way a person might begin a prayer. Eastern State was designed to reform men through solitude, she says. Each prisoner had a cell. Each cell had a single skylight. The men were hooded whenever they were moved so they could not see one another. They ate alone, worked alone, and prayed alone. The idea was that silence would force repentance. Instead, it forced collapse. Men lost time. Men spoke to themselves. Men heard voices where there were none. Men clawed at walls. Men walked in circles. Men forgot the sound of their own names. You try to make a joke, but the words die before they leave your mouth. The first cell you enter is narrow enough to make your shoulders tighten instinctively. There is a simple bed, a basin, and high above it, the square opening in the ceiling that they called the Eye of God. You tilt your head back and look up into darkness framed by old stone. Somewhere beyond that opening, the night sky is hidden behind the prison roof, and you imagine a prisoner standing in this same spot, staring upward for years, seeing only that small piece of heaven and nothing else. That was supposed to help them? You ask. Mara gives a short laugh, but there is no amusement in it. Supposedly. She points at the wall. Faded marks cross the stone in uneven clusters. Some are scratches, some are deep grooves, some look like lines made by fingernails after the nail had already begun to split. People think the horror here was violence, she says. The horror was the waiting. You move deeper into the block. Your recorder is already on, and at first it captures only the obvious things: footsteps, a distant wind through broken glass, the soft click of your bag strap against your jacket. Then, when you stop in the middle of the corridor to adjust your microphone, the audio in your headphones changes. Under the ordinary noise, beneath the room tone of the prison, you hear something else. A low, measured breath. You freeze. Mara notices your face. What? Did you hear that? She does not answer right away. Her gaze has shifted toward the end of the corridor. Hear what? You lift the headphones away from your ears and listen with your bare skin. The sound is still there, faint and patient, like someone standing in a nearby room trying not to be heard. It does not sound like wind. It does not sound like the building settling. It sounds like a person who has been told to remain silent and is failing. It's breathing, you say. Mara looks back at you slowly. That should not be possible. The words land with a weight that makes your stomach tighten. Before you can ask what she means, the sound stops. The silence that follows feels wrong in a different way. It is not empty. It is attentive. Mara leads you onward, her pace a little faster now. She talks as if speaking can keep the dark from thickening around you. She explains that the prison was once the most expensive building in the country, that it was famous not just for its purpose, but for the belief behind it. Reform through isolation. Redemption through loneliness. A man locked away with only God and his conscience. The system spread because people wanted punishment that looked humane. But the prison filled beyond capacity, the cells grew crowded, and the grand theory turned into a disaster. By the time the institution abandoned the pure form of the Pennsylvania system in 1913, the damage had already been done. You stop beside a wall where the stone is scratched in repeating marks. Counted marks, not random, but deliberate. 3 lines, then a space, then 3 more. You crouch to look closer. There are so many of them that they overlap, older scratches buried beneath newer ones. Some are clean. Others have been smeared by time or by fingers. Were prisoners allowed to make marks like this, you ask? No. Then how did they get here? Mara's answer is almost too quiet to hear. By being alone long enough, you lift your hand, hesitate, then let it fall. The wall seems to absorb the light from your flashlight. For a moment you think you see a shape in the deeper dark of the cell behind the bars, but when you turn, there is only the cot, the basin, and the stale, empty air. You keep moving. The prison is built like a wheel, and walking it feels like moving through the inside of a thought. Corridors branch from a central hub, then stretch away into darkness. Every doorway opens into another narrow world of stone and shadow. The longer you walk, the more the building seems to repeat itself. A stairwell appears where there should only be wall. A barred door stands slightly open that you are certain was shut moments ago. You glance back more than once and find the corridor behind you looking longer than it should, as if distance is being quietly edited while you are not looking. Mara stops at a glass case containing old prison records. The pages inside are yellowed and delicate, preserved behind reflections of your own face. She reads one of the notes out loud. Cell 18. Refuses food. Cell 21. Claims to hear his mother in the wall. Cell 24. Does not sleep. She pauses, then points lower on the page. Cell 31. Reports footsteps in the corridor after lights out. You glance at her. 31? She is staring at the paper so hard that you think she might tear a hole through it with her eyes. That number is not in the public map. Then why is it in the record? Because someone wrote it down. Who? Mara finally looks at you. That is the wrong question. A metal clang echoes somewhere deep in the prison, not loud enough to be a crash, not soft enough to ignore. Both of you turn toward the sound. The corridor is empty. The cells are empty. The darkness is not. You are beginning to feel that the building is arranged for something other than human use. It is too still. Too aware. Even the dust seems to hang in place and listen. At the next corner, Mara tells you not to separate from her under any circumstance. You almost laugh at the seriousness of it until you notice her hand is shaking. She catches you looking and hides it in her coat pocket. I've worked here for years, she says. I know the stories, the layout, the history. That does not mean I enjoy this part of the building after midnight. You try to lighten the mood. You say that like there are parts of the building you do enjoy. There are. Which parts? The ones where the doors stay closed. The answer would have sounded like a joke in any other place. Here it sounds like a confession. You climb to the upper tier. The corridor is narrower there, with lower ceilings and colder air. The prison seems to lean inward overhead. Your recorder catches a faint scrape, and then another, as if something is being dragged over stone a few rooms away. You stop instantly. Mara stops too. What now? You whisper. She listens. Nothing. Nothing. That is what I said. Then the scraping comes again, this time behind you. You whirl around. No one stands in the corridor, but one of the cell doors has shifted open by a fraction, enough to reveal a strip of black interior. You are certain it had been shut a moment ago. You and Mara stare at it. Neither of you moves. A whisper slips through the opening. It is too soft to be called a voice, and yet it forms a word with terrible clarity. Your name. You take a step backward so fast, your shoulder hits the wall. Mara grabs your arm. You heard it, she says. Yes, her face tightens. I did too. The cell door remains open. The darkness inside does not move, but you feel as if something is waiting just beyond the edge of sight, perfectly still, learning the shape of your fear. You move on because the alternative is to stand there until your pulse becomes unbearable. The farther you go, the more the prison seems to rearrange the meaning of distance. Hallways that should have led to the exit bend toward darker sections. A stairway that should have taken you down takes you up instead. You begin to suspect that the building is not confusing you. It is guiding you. At the end of another corridor, you see an old photograph mounted on the wall. It shows a cell block, decades ago, prisoners in hooded masks being escorted in line. At the edge of the image, half lost to grain and shadow, stands a solitary figure facing the camera. The hood is turned slightly, the body angled as if it had noticed the photographer at the last instant. You look at it once, then again. The shape is wrong in a way you cannot name. Mara goes still beside you. I have never seen that detail before. What detail? She points. You follow her finger and feel the blood lead your face. The hooded figure in the photo resembles you so closely that the resemblance takes a second to register. The posture, the narrowness of the shoulders, the slight bend of the head, not enough to prove anything. Just enough to make your mind stumble toward the impossible and then recoil. That's not funny, you say. Mara's expression tells you she was never joking. I'm not joking. A chill crawls up the back of your neck. The lights flicker. Once. Twice. Then the corridor plunges into red emergency glow. The entire prison becomes a bruise. You hear a voice somewhere in the dark. Not Mara's. Not yours. Not yours. A voice from the far end of the corridor, calm and intimate and impossibly close all at once. Test, it says. Your recorder, hanging against your chest, has come to life. You never touched it. The tiny red light blinks in the dark. Static pours from the speaker. Then a second voice comes through, and you nearly stumble because it sounds like yours. Older, fainter. Worn down at the edges. If this file exists, the voice says, then you found the room. Mara turns sharply toward you. What room? The recorder continues before you can answer. Do not let her hear it. Mara's face drains of color. What does that mean? You back away from the recorder as if it has become hot. I don't know. The voice on the device ignores you. It started with the breathing, it says. Then came the footsteps. Then the name. I thought I was documenting the prison. I was wrong. The prison was documenting me. Static bursts across the speaker and then thins into a whisper so soft you almost miss the next line. Cell 31 is not on any map. Mara grabs your wrist hard enough to hurt. Shut that off. You fumble for the button, but before you can press it, the recorder speaks one final sentence. It has already learned your name. Then it goes dead. You stare at the device, horrified by the fact that it still feels warm. Mara lets go of your arm and takes a step back, not from the recorder but from you. That movement is worse than any scream. You see the thought in her face before she hides it. She is beginning to wonder whether the thing in the prison came out with you, whether it chose you, whether the voice on the tape has been waiting for this exact night. No, you say immediately, though she has not asked the question aloud. Mara's voice is thin. No what? It didn't follow me. She does not answer. The prison gives her silence back, as if it were listening. Then from somewhere below the stairs comes a knock. 1. 2. 3. The same deliberate rhythm as before. The sound travels through the floorboards and into your knees. Mara backs toward the railing. We need to leave. A second set of knocks answers from another corridor. Then another. You turn in a slow circle, trying to locate them, but the sounds now come from everywhere and nowhere. From behind the walls. From inside the cells. From the iron doors. The prison has begun to answer itself. A new voice joins the knocking. Not a knock at all this time, but a whisper, threaded through the dark like smoke. Elias. The name comes from several places at once. Upper tiers. Lower halls. somewhere behind you, somewhere beneath your feet. Mara grabs your sleeve. Did you say your name earlier? You stare at her. Why would I do that? Because that might be enough.
Did you say your own name earlier?
Enough for what?
No.
She is shaking now, not visibly at first, but in the tension of her jaw, the tightness of her shoulders, the way she keeps looking at the black mouths of the corridors.
Saying a name.
For it to answer.
It might be
The corridor at the far end opens into the main yard, and for a brief moment you see the outer gate. Relief surges through you so fast, it feels like pain. You break into a run with Mara beside you. The prison seems to sharpen around your fear. Every echo becomes a pursuit. Your shoes slap against old stone. A door slams behind you. Then another. Then the sound of many doors striking at once, a metallic thunder that rolls through the cell blocks like a wave. Mara is breathing hard now. You are too. Ahead, the yard stretches toward the gate, but the gate is locked. A guard appears on the other side, his flashlight washing the iron in white bars of light. He looks at both of you, then toward the corridors behind, and his expression changes from irritation to something much darker. Get out, he says. It's locked. Mara shouts. He fumbles with his keys and unlocks the gate, but before it swings open fully, he looks past you into the prison and goes pale. You turn. At the top of the highest corridor stands a line of hooded figures. They are motionless, evenly spaced, faces hidden, bodies angled toward you in perfect stillness. There are too many to count properly, and yet you feel each one separately. The sight of them is worse than if they had moved. They do not need to. Their patience is enough. A voice calls out from somewhere within the prison. Mara's voice. Elias. Mara makes a sound of fear so sharp it breaks in the air. That is not me, she whispers. The figure at the front of the line lifts its head slowly. Even from here you know the shape beneath the hood. The proportions are wrong only in the slightest possible way, which is exactly why they terrify you. The body is your body, or the body it could become if the prison keeps subtracting from you. The voice comes again, softer now, with the tenderness of a person asking for help. Don't leave me in here. Mara stares at you, horrified, and you understand in one cold instant that she is no longer asking whether you have told the prison your name. She already knows the answer. The guard shouts for you to move, and you and Mara stumble through the gate into the outer yard. The metal slams shut behind you with a sound like a coffin closing. The prison falls into a sudden silence so complete it rings in your ears. You turn back. In one of the upper windows, at the level where the skylight catches the night, a figure stands looking down. No hood now. Just a man-shaped shadow with your posture, your height, your stillness. Then the red emergency lights flicker once across the prison face, and the figure is gone. You do not speak until the car reaches the city, and the prison is no longer visible behind the buildings. Mara drives with both hands fixed tightly on the wheel, her breathing shallow and controlled in the way people breathe when they are trying not to panic in front of another person. Finally, you ask the question that has been sitting like ice in your throat. What was that room? Mara keeps her eyes on the road. I don't know.
You know more than
You said you knew this place.
Really?
I know the public history.
I told you. I only
That
know
is
the
not an
public
answer.
history. That's it.
She nods once,
It's not
and for a
enough.
moment you think
Not
she
after
might
what we
cry.
saw.
Instead, she says, there are corridors and old buildings
It's
that
not
people
just the
forget,
prison.
spaces between
It's the
documented
corridors and
things,
old buildings.
renovations,
Spaces that
closures,
exist between
storage,
documented history.
sealed cells. Sometimes a place acquires a room no one admits to because everyone is too afraid to say they saw it. That's impossible. Then explain the recording. You have no
I was in
explanation.
the East Block before.
She continues
Found
quietly.
a cell that wasn't on
Years
the map.
ago, I was
Cell
told not to
31.
go into the
Scratches
East
on
Block
walls,
alone.
a cot, a
I
recording,
didn't
my
listen.
name.
I found a
Carved
cell
into
that
the
wasn't
cell.
on any map. Number 31. It had scratches in the wall. A cot. A recorder. And my name carved into the stone. You stare at her. She is not looking at you now. I ran, she says. When I came back the next day, the room was gone. The hallway was there, but the door wasn't. No one admitted the room had ever existed. That's when I stopped thinking of the prison as a building. She glances at you once, and the fear in her face is now mixed with something worse, recognition. What? She grips the wheel harder. I started thinking of it as a habit. The car goes quiet for a long time. The city moves around you in ordinary streams of light, but none of it feels ordinary now. The prison has changed the texture of everything. You cannot stop hearing the recorder in your head. You cannot stop feeling the moment the voice said it had learned your name. Mara drops you at your apartment without offering to come up. Lock everything, she says. You almost laugh at the futility of that advice, but the sound never comes. Instead, you climb the stairs alone and enter your apartment one room at a time, switching on lights before you look. The closet is shut. The windows are closed. The hall is empty. No one has been inside. You tell yourself that twice before you believe it enough to breathe. Then you see the recorder on your desk. You know you left it in the car. You know you did. But there it is, whole again, with the red light blinking. You do not touch it. It begins to play anyway. At first there is only static. Then the sound of a room tone you recognize with a sick drop in your stomach. The prison. The same low pressure. The same breathing under the walls. A voice comes through. Yours. If you are hearing this, it says, then you came back. Your skin goes cold. I thought I could get out by making the room into a story, the voice continues. But the room wants a listener, not a witness. The building was built to isolate men from one another. I think that is how it learned to keep things. It listened to loneliness long enough to become one. You back toward the apartment door. The recorder says your name again, but this time in the tired, worn voice you heard in the prison. Elias. Then, after a long pause, a second voice enters the recording, Mara's. Soft and far away. Don't leave me in here. You slam your hands over your ears, but the sound continues. Not from the recorder now, from the hallway outside your door. 3 knocks. A pause. Then one more, very gently, as if whoever is on the other side already knows you are listening. You stand motionless in the dim apartment, every muscle rigid, every thought narrowing to a single terrible point. The voice outside speaks your name with the calm certainty of someone who has waited a very long time to be heard. You do not answer. The silence that follows is not empty. It is attentive. It presses against the door. It breathes through the seams. Then, slowly, the doorknob turns. You do not know whether what stands outside is the prison, Mara, the thing in the hood, or only the final shape of your own fear. All you know is that the voice on the other side sounds almost relieved when it speaks again. Elias, it says, you left the room open. And because you have spent all night learning what happens when a silence is left waiting, you take one step backward and understand too late that the room is no longer behind the prison wall. It is here. That is the sentence that ends the old recordings, if they are ever found, if anyone ever listens long enough to understand them. Not a scream, not a final breath. Just that one impossible realization, arriving with the cold patience of a hand on a shoulder in the dark. The prison did not chase you through the city. It did not need to. It followed the path you made by remembering it. It grew in your attention, in your fear, in the act of speaking its name over and over until the walls of your own life began to answer back. You keep staring at the door. The knob turns once more, then stops. A voice, so close that it seems to come from inside the walls, says your name one final time, and behind it you hear another sound, faint but unmistakable, the scrape of a pen-marking stone, counting nights, waiting patiently for the next answer. You do not open the door. You do not breathe. You only listen as the silence gathers itself around you like a room learning how to close.